So guys, with episode 3 Heresy, the Arc subclasses got a whole load of buffs and additions, one of them being Bolt Charge, which I made a separate video on yesterday, but that's not what we're talking about here today. Today we got two different Arc Warlock builds for you guys. One uses Geomag Stabilizers, and the other uses Getaway Artist. One is more super based and spammy, the other is more focused on just spamming your actual abilities, but we're going to go over all the details you need to know about these two very fun builds here in today's video. So let's just jump straight into it. First off, with the Geomag Stabilizers build. So pretty much you should be starting off here with getting a pair of Geomag Stabilizers because they did get a big buff heading into this episode. They obviously kept their original trait of being able to extend the duration of Chaos Reach, and collecting Ionic Traces will grant you Chaos Reach energy. But one thing to note is that these traces will actually give you more energy than they used to. Before, they would give you 2% per pickup, now they're giving you 7%, which is really good. But then the new trait that they added is that while you are near maximum Bolt Charge, sprinting will actually top off those stacks, similar to what Geomags used to do with topping off your super. Now it tops off Bolt Charge, which is very handy. Once again, I'll have my video for Bolt Charge linked in the description because it does a whole load of damage, and you should definitely take a look at that. But going into the build itself, obviously we are using Chaos Reach here, the super. Pretty self-explanatory. You should definitely be using this with Geomags because that's the whole idea of them. Then for abilities, I have Healing Rift and Burst Glide, and then for my melee, I'm using Ball Lightning, and then I'm also using Pulse Grenade. These two you can just switch depending on what you like, and one thing to note about the melees here is that they actually gain a benefit when you become amplified. So for Ball Lightning, while amplified, Ball Lightning releases additional lightning strikes before detonating, and then for Chain Lightning, while amplified, it creates an additional set of chains. So one thing to note there about those melees, Pulse Nade is a very good grenade, but you can change it for like Flashbang or a Storm Grenade, whatever you're feeling. Then for the aspects, we're of course using the brand new Ionic Sentry. If you don't know where to get this from, you go to Ikora Ray in the tower, and she'll just have it there waiting for you. You buy it for Glimmer, and then talk to the little snow globe thing next to her, and then that's you getting Ionic Sentry. For those who don't know what this does, this basically works like a Gunpowder Gamble from the Solar Hunter subclass, where defeating targets with kinetic or arc weapons or arc abilities charge up an arc turret that periodically chains lightning between nearby targets and grants a stack of Bolt Charge with each hit. Also, deploying the Ionic Sentry blinds nearby targets on initial impact. So it's a very strong aspect, and it basically works like a stasis turret, except it doesn't consume your grenade energy when you use it, because you'll have your basic grenade, and then when you get enough stacks for the Ionic Sentry, your grenade just gets turned into the Sentry, you throw it out, and then you still have your base grenade there, which is very handy. Then for my next aspect, I'm using Electrostatic Mind, where defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic Trace, and then collecting those traces will also make me amplified. This thing, pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to be getting those traces back very quickly, and Jolt and Blind are going to be some things that you're going to have very easy access to. Blind comes from the Ionic Sentry, but then Jolt mainly comes from your grenade thanks to Spark of Shock, where your arc grenade jolt targets. It's one of the fragments we're using. For other fragments, we of course have Spark of Resistance for that increased resilience there when surrounded. But then for the other two, we're using Spark of Frequency and Spark of Discharge. These two actually got some pretty big changes with this episode. The Spark of Frequency states that melee hits increase your equipped weapons reload speed and stability for a short duration, but now, while amplified, the effects are increased and you gain increased stacks of Bolt Charge from all sources. What this means is that when you would normally gain 1 stack of Bolt Charge, you're instead going to gain 2 stacks, so you're just going to be generating Bolt Charge more quickly. And then for Spark of Discharge, arc weapon final blows have a chance to create an Ionic Trace, and then collecting an Ionic Trace will grant you a stack of Bolt Charge. So pair that with Electrostatic Mind, everything that you're going to be doing, blinding, jolting, defeating targets with arc weapons, all of it will be generating you traces, which feeds into your grenade, melee, and class ability energy, but also your Chaos Reach super. So everything you do is just going to be refilling all your abilities, and it's a whole load of fun. Now, for the weapons that I recommend that you use for this build, I'm using the Lodestar because it's personally one of my favourite weapons this episode. For those who don't know, this is the brand new Arc Trace Rifle you get from the Season Pass, and when you hip fire, it's just like a normal Trace Rifle, but aiming down sights will turn it into a Pulse Rifle, and then when you get to a maximum charge, so just by dealing damage, you'll be charging up the weapon, holding reload will then make the hip fire mode jolt targets, which, once again, pairs very well with this build because defeating jolted targets will grant you Ionic Traces, which feeds into literally everything within this build. Now, if you don't want to use Lodestar, 2 other exotic weapons that I would highly recommend you use for both of these builds is going to be either the Cold Heart, because this thing by default will generate you Ionic Tracers when it's in its high damage state, but also for this episode in particular, Delicate Tomb, because then it also got a buff, it also jolts and will create Ionic Tracers. But also, if you take a look at the artifact for this season in the final column, we have Particle Reconstruction, where dealing sustained damage with fusion rifles or linear fusion rifles partially refills the magazine from reserves and grants them bonus damage for a short duration against that target. That's just a free damage boost, which is amazing. And speaking of the artifact, another perk that I would highly recommend you guys use is Flash Over. This will be increasing the amount of damage that Bolt Charge does, which is absolutely insane. Then you also have stuff like Photonic Flare, where defeating any exhausted or severed targets with arc damage releases a blinding burst, spreading that blind again, which is very, very useful. Then also have Overclock and Load while you're amplified, or have Bolt Charge arc weapons gain increased handling and reload speed, just a buff there generally when using arc, which is great. Then you also have the Electric, where defeating arc debuff targets will also grant you Bolt Charge. So there's a whole load of stuff in this artifact which you should definitely be taking advantage of. Then another perk that we have here that I don't actually have quite yet is Defibrillating Blast, where stunning a champion grants maximum stacks of Bolt Charge and triggers an arc bolt that heals you and jolts combatants that it damages. Another great one you should definitely be taking advantage of this episode with this build. And for just the general mods here, nothing really all that special. Obviously, you've got a Firepower mod and a Grenade Kickstart. Then you've just got Recuperation and Innovation, just so that when you pick up an orb of power, you're going to be feeding back into your grenade. And then I also have Bomber, so that when I use my class ability, I'm getting that grenade back just so I can spam my nades and just get my Ionic Tracers going there to feed into all of my abilities. Very fun build, and now let's go over the second build here, which actually takes advantage of Getaway Artist. So, if you're a fan of the Prismatic build, where you summon both a Stasis Turret and an Arc Buddy, this basically works similarly to that, or of course using Getaway Artist, where we can then consume our Arc Grenade and convert it into a Arc Buddy. Pairing that, of course, with Ionic Sentry is a whole lot of fun, because then you have two buddies for the price of one, which is amazing. Then we're also using, once again, Electrostatic Mind, because we do not need to use the Arc Soul aspect due to Getaway Artist, which is amazing. For the grenade here, I mainly changed this to a flashbang grenade because it has the shortest base cooldown, so then we can get our Arc Soul back pretty quickly. And then for the fragments here, I'm once again using Spark of Resistance, Spark of Recharge now, just for when critically wounded, your melee and grenade recharge more quickly. This is a great one just to get that Arc Soul back up quicker. And then we're once again using Spark of Frequency and Spark of Discharge, once again for the consistent Ionic Tracers and Bolt Charge. And yeah, only things that I change around here with the mods is that I, instead of having a Firepower mod, I have a Heavy-Handed mod, due to the fact that I'm not going to be getting grenade kills, because both Arc Soul and Ionic Sentry do not count as grenade abilities. They're their own unique thing, so don't think that any grenade-based things will work other than like a grenade kickstart whenever you use your grenade energy. And yeah, that's it for both of these builds. Highly recommend taking advantage of them this episode because they are both very, very strong. And if you haven't seen my video on Bolt Charge yet, highly would recommend watching that because it actually does way more damage than an Ignition, especially with some of the artifact mods. Once again, I'll have that linked in the description if you are interested. And yeah, that's it for today's video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. If you did, remember to leave a like and subscribe. That's it from me here today, so I'll catch you guys in the next one.